$1 trillion per year to fraud. $1 trillion. That's more than the entire defense budget for this year. A more conservative estimate, the GAO's estimate, is that the federal government loses about $521 billion to fraud every year. That's about the budget of the Department of Veterans Affairs. Either way, we're talking about just enormous amounts. And of course, we've seen it on display in states recently like Minnesota.
Under oath today, a number came out that every American should hear. Experts estimate the United States loses close to $1 trillion to fraud every year. That number is real. It is not a mistake. It is not inflated. $1 trillion every single year. To put that into context, this amount is higher than the entire U.S. defense budget this year. Even conservative government estimates show more than $500 billion is lost annually. Money meant for seniors, money meant for children, money meant for vulnerable Americans. This is not just a paper problem. We have already seen the damage. Fake organizations, federal funds stolen, luxury lifestyles built with taxpayer money. Today, Senator Josh Hawley raised this issue directly. He said this money does not belong to politicians or agencies. It belongs to American taxpayers who work for every dollar they earn, and stealing it without consequences cannot be acceptable. Now let's watch what Senator Hawley said. After that, we'll break down where this $1 trillion in fraud is happening and why it keeps happening year after year.
My question to you is, are we going to see some more accountability coming for the fraud that has been perpetrated on this country, particularly in places like Minnesota? I mean, is accountability coming?
Senator, our goal will be to bring accountability. It will not be easy, but we will work tirelessly to bring that accountability to ensure that the fraud that we are seeing annually is erased.
Let me just give you one example of the kind of accountability I think we need to see. The Attorney General of the state of Minnesota, Keith Ellison, was in front of a committee of mine, and under oath, I would just say, just a couple of weeks ago. Mr. Ellison is right at the center of the scandal, the Somali fraud scandal that has rocked that state. Just to take one piece of it, a group called Feeding Our Future, as you probably know, defrauded the federal government of at least $250 million. $250 million that did not go to feed the homeless. It did not go to feed the poor. It did not go to feed children. Instead, it bought yachts. It bought luxury planes. It bought fancy vacations. It was smuggled out of the Minneapolis airport in suitcases. 12,000 pounds of $100 bills smuggled out of the Minneapolis airport in suitcases, for heaven's sake. 60 people, I think, have been charged with wrongdoing as part of this corruption scheme. But here's the deal. The leaders of this organization, this fraud outfit, came and met with the Attorney General, Keith Ellison, directly. They talked to him for 54 minutes. This was back in 2021, and complained to him that they were being investigated, heaven forbid. And he offered to help them. They repeatedly offered him campaign contributions, and we know this because they recorded the meeting. 54 minutes of recording that we have, because the fraudsters recorded the meeting. Ellison tried to deny it. It's all on tape. They offer him money repeatedly, and he says things like this. I think we may have a poster of it. He says, we are in the middle of the battle with agencies now who are investigating them. He says, he's the Attorney General of the state. He says, Waltz, meaning the governor, agrees with me that this piddly, stupid stuff running small people out of business is terrible. Piddly, stupid stuff, meaning investigation for mass fraud. He goes on to say, just to be able to say, just getting the question, just getting the inquiry from the Attorney General is sometimes enough to make people knock it off. In other words, he offered repeatedly to help them get rid of the investigations that were ongoing into this group. Even as they were sitting there, he said to them, I am directing my staff right now to intervene on your behalf. And then just days after he met with them, he took $10,000 in campaign contributions, including from individuals who were indicted by the federal government for fraud. He's been charged with nothing. And in fact, he sat where you're sitting under oath, and he denied to me he took any money at all. I've got it right here. It's in his own campaign finance reports. $10,000, including from indicted individuals and others who are associated with this group, members of this group, that defrauded the federal government of $250 million. My question to you is, are we going to see accountability for people like that? Are we going to see heads roll for people who are in the middle of this fraud and enabled it and protected the fraudsters and defended it and used their office in order to help people get away with crimes?
Senator, first, that is certainly not how law enforcement is supposed to work. When there is evidence and when investigators are digging into potential crime, to then have lead law enforcement try to close up that shop and turn away the investigators. That's not how law enforcement is supposed to work, and it's certainly not how law enforcement is going to work in the Department of Justice and in the National Fraud Enforcement Division. The vision that we have is a division that is large enough where no fraud is too big and no fraud is too small, so that we can reach all actors within the chain of criminal culpability, and no one more than that. Only those within the chain of criminal culpability. Those are the ones that we are going to be looking after, investigating, and following the facts without fear or favor.
Good. I think that's absolutely vital. I think it's long overdue. You said that no fraud is too big or too small. I hope that will also mean that no elected official is too big or too small, because those who helped enable this fraud, those who stopped investigations, they should be prosecuted too. If we don't get accountability, as you know, Mr. McDonald, this will never stop, and we need accountability now.
Government audits and investigative reports show that fraud is not limited to one program or one department. It is spread across multiple systems, and when combined, the total financial loss reaches hundreds of billions of dollars every year, and in some estimates close to $1 trillion annually. The largest share comes from federal benefit programs. Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment benefits, and food assistance programs account for an estimated $300 to $400 billion per year in fraud and improper payments. This includes payments made for medical services that never happened, benefits issued to people who do not exist, and repeated claims made using stolen or duplicate identities. Official audit data consistently shows that health and social benefit programs represent the biggest portion of annual losses. The second major area involves pandemic-era relief programs. Programs such as PPP loans, stimulus payments, and emergency grants were created quickly to respond to a national crisis. However, government records indicate that approximately $200 to $300 billion is linked to fraud or significant risk of loss in these programs. Fake businesses were created on paper, employee numbers were exaggerated. In many cases, the same individual applied multiple times under different names. Once funds were received, accounts were emptied, and in some cases, money was transferred outside the country. A third area involves federal funds distributed through state governments. Money flowed from federal agencies to states and then to nonprofit organizations. Audit findings suggest that $50 to $100 billion in losses are connected to this channel. In several states, individual cases alone involved hundreds of millions of dollars. Funds intended for children, low-income families, and community services were instead used for personal luxury expenses. These cases show that the issue is not limited to one state or one program. Government procurement and large federal contracts also contribute significantly to the problem. Defense contracts and other federal purchasing programs account for approximately $100 billion or more each year in fraud and waste. Some contracts were paid in full even when work was incomplete. In other cases, invoices were inflated or submitted by vendors with no verifiable services. Complex contracting systems and limited oversight allowed these losses to continue over time. Identity theft and tax-related fraud form another major category. Stolen Social Security numbers were used to claim tax refunds and access multiple government programs. According to government assessments and research from private companies, this category represents approximately $100 to $150 billion annually. Much of this activity is automated, allowing fraud to spread quickly across systems before detection. When all of these categories are combined, the overall picture becomes clear. Conservative government audits estimate losses of more than $500 billion per year. When expert analysis and additional research are included, total annual losses approach $1 trillion. This money does not disappear through a single scam. It is lost across multiple programs, multiple agencies, and different levels of government. Oversight often failed to keep pace. Warnings were delayed. Investigations took time to begin. In many cases, funds were already gone before corrective action could be taken. The impact is not limited to accounting reports or government balance sheets. These funds were intended for medical care, support for children, assistance for seniors, and help for vulnerable communities. When this money is lost, the consequences are felt by the people these programs were designed to serve. That is why accountability remains a central issue. Without clear responsibility and effective enforcement, the same losses will continue year after year. The question is not only how much was lost, but how these systems will be corrected to prevent future losses. If you found this video useful, please support the channel by subscribing, liking the video, and sharing your thoughts in the comments.